All right. So, hey, welcome to my desk where I'll be talking about postmodernism, a literary theory. Presentation of The Only Lies You Really Know, grade 14. This is Gary. He's right there. Okay, so let's get into it. I tried to put this on the screen and record like that, but that's behind a paywall, so this is what we got. So I know you won't be able to read this, but if you zoom in, you can see how many hours I worked on this slide. The theory. It's my favorite literary era, like so many good stuff. The theory encompasses rejection of traditional literary forms, uses lots of fragmentation, lots of times there's an unreliable narrator there, very meta in its form and encompassing. It lacks clear characters and aspects of a character. What else? Its structure, it just goes through the window. That's for sure. Chaos and disorder in theme and styles, which we're about to get into why. So, origins. It is a response to modernism, influenced by the events of World War II, which is where the chaos and the disorder part come in. People like Kurt Vonnegut, Thomas Pynchon, all those really weird 70s authors. That's kind of what postmodernist literature is in the novel aspects. In the philosophy, think like Michel Foucault and Jacques Derrida, Lyotard as well. It mostly spread from France, even though the theory existed before then. It mostly, when it started gaining limelight, it extended from France and other parts of Europe. The Foucault was the guy the history of sexuality guy, and Derrida also did some stuff. But these are kind of not necessarily Kurt Vonnegut and Thomas Pynchon are leaders of this movement, but those are just examples. And my example and application is Divine Rights Trip by Gurney Norman, which is my favorite book as of right now. Read it this semester. Very, very awesome book. Gurney Norman was a Kentucky author. He had just passed away this October, so rest in peace. But the Kentucky author, and the book was born out of the early 60s merry pranksters and hippie movement, and largely attends to that. But Gurney wouldn't claim this as a postmodernist book. I read in an article with Lance Olson and Gurney Norman combating each other about postmodernism, and he probably, judging by that article, he would not claim this as a postmodernist book. But the ideas in this book and the way that the book is structured, in its form, in its character play, in its story, is very postmodern. And next slide. This is Rick Childers holding up a copy of Divine Rights Trip. As you can see, there's a little gif of a cat. Another copy of the book. So the summary of the book starts off as a hippie road trip novel, and it largely stays that way for the first half of the book. They kind of go across the country. They meet all these characters, and it stays pretty a little psychedelic, but stays pretty formal in that aspect. And once you get about to the midsection and the rest of it, it starts to really pick up in its different sort of ways it plays with form and characters and binaries, etc. So some points. I don't want to spoil too much of the book, but I also kind of have to for this assignment. Unreliable narrator, Divine Right. It's Divine Right's Trip, that's the main character, or David Ray Davenport. Very unreliable narrator. He's kind of full of himself a little bit, which is to be expected from some of the events that happen. There's a scene when he is coming home to Kentucky. The whole point of their journey is to kind of reconnect with some friends along the way, and then eventually he has to go back to Kentucky to help his uncle, who is old. Eventually he kind of separates out of himself and fights himself as a dragon in a coal mine in eastern Kentucky, which is kind of the reason there's a dragon on the book. I hope this isn't inverted on this, because that would be annoying, but we're just gonna roll with it. Also, another very postmodern thing about this is that Gurney does appear in the book to advance a major plot point towards the end. I won't say what the plot point is, but I do know what it is. I've read the book, but that's a very postmodern thing. Like, the author literally appears in the book. Then it's kind of the anti-postmodern part of the book is DR, Divine Right, eventually returns to some sort of traditional method after this kind of raucous, psychedelic journey. And he turns to farming off the land, taking care of the land, So, formatting. The book is largely in smaller chapters, very small sections, and this is because the book was originally, this is another part where it's like rejecting narratives that were rejecting old narratives, is the book was originally published in the margins of a catalog. So very untraditional there. Kind of like, what is a book? What is the meaning of all these things? I'm gonna try and keep this under 10 minutes. So hopefully we'll get there. So because of that, a lot of the book is formatted in these short little sections. Important things to note about postmodernism. It's a response to these structures of modernist literature that were present during that time. Heavy structure, just like looking at the structure of the text. It wants to reject that. Important to the world in its message is to just be skeptical of the grand narratives and the world at large, which means don't take what is there for granted. Just because that's the way it's done doesn't mean it has to be done that way. What does anything mean? Skeptical established ways of knowing about things, and just without postmodernism and the way that thinkers are thinking of postmodernism, this book would not be able to exist, because it wouldn't have had the avenues to be thought of in this way, especially in its original form in the catalog. This is a little bit more traditional in the book form, but especially in the catalog, that's pretty postmodern in my opinion. And stuff like that would prepare wouldn't prepare. I don't know what I'm saying. I do know what I'm saying, but I don't know what I just said there. Gary also reappears. Gary has nothing to do with Divine Rights Trip. Thank you. Here's some scattered images of Hazard, Kentucky, and Gurney Norman, and Ed McClanahan, his friend, and another book, Confolks, by Gurney Norman. Thank you so much, and this was welcome to my TED Talk.